Friday, October 11th State Board meeting will now come to order. If you will, please stand and we'll say the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a fairly short agenda today, and are there any changes that anybody wants to make or knows of? Also, you'll notice that Dr. Hill and Ms. Newton and Mr. Williamson and Ms. Chambers are absent, but we do have a quorum. We'll start first with reports. I know something was laid here for you from Ms. Wright, laid that for there. So if we can start with you on community engagement.
Stuttgart School District has been confirmed as the Family and Community Engagement Pilot District. And this partnership includes additional technical assistance and support as needed to improve their engagement in the district. Parental engagement plans were due October 1st and are currently being reviewed for federal and state compliance. There's continued communication and messaging around engagement and the Family and Community Engagement Framework and Toolkit through new partnerships, conference presentations, vendor booth opportunities, and social media posts. The 4-person practicum team from the Clinton School of Public Service has been collaborating with the FACE team to determine the research topic in which they'll provide support. The FACE team has hosted the first two parent engagement facilitator coordinator advisory Zoom meetings, and the next meeting will be on October 24th at 2 o'clock. Kim Wright attended the IDRA Equity Assistance Center South Advisory Committee meeting in September. She heard and learned many things regarding equity that can be used in the toolkits, as well as topics to discuss for improving equity in the state. And the FACE team facilitated an ADE division introduction / support meeting with the new divisions under the ADE umbrella. The intention of this team is to increase communication across the divisions and support one another to achieve our goals. We will be having another meeting this afternoon after this meeting, so
Okay,
things are going well.
All right. Mr. Packron, anything?
Nothing to report.
All right. Ms. McAdoo?
I do. I don't have a formal pictures or any of that, so do I will still go down to the podium.
Good morning.
Good morning. So my report has changed drastically, even as of right now. At the last board meeting, I was asked by one of the board members to have my next presentation be more reflective about my process and what I've been experiencing. At the time, I told the member that I just kind of smiled and didn't think that I was ready to do that. I felt that if I gave a reflection, it needed to be at the end of my term. And so what I was trying to do the last 2 times was just kind of let you guys know what I was doing instead of how I was feeling or what was going on. But today I do feel that I need to share how I'm feeling about everything. I know that there's been a lot going on, just period. And for me personally, I'm in this really weird space where I'm not a part of you, and I'm not a part of them. I'm here, right here. And what I would like to be is a bridge between these two, but I don't know how that looks or how to make that happen. And I also know that there have been a lot of people who have been attacked and who have felt as though they were rightly called names or being referred to as things of the past, specifically 1957. And I need you to know that yesterday, when the vote was made and called to decertify the LREA, I felt like I was in 1958, not 57. I felt like I was in 1958 at a time where the government was unhappy with what was happening in the Little Rock School District, that they decided to shut down the high school so that they could stop what was going on. That's what that felt like to me. I'm positive that's what it felt like to a lot of my colleagues. Alice Walker has a book entitled "The Way Forward is with a Broken Heart," and that's how I'm moving forward right now, with a broken heart. I hope that I can figure out a way that we can be this bridge. We have to figure out how to be a part of the community and how to truly hear each other. I think part of how everything is set up allows us to talk to one another and not with one another. And I don't know. So that is my reflection right now today. I also, in terms of the Teacher of the Year process, prior to coming into this role, I knew in my spirit that there was a lot of ugliness out there in the world. I didn't have necessarily any proof to pinpoint and say this is this or whatever, but I will say that in my journey so far, I have seen ugliness. I have felt ugliness from residents in our state who question, how am I the Teacher of the Year? They'll ask it with a disdain look on their face. So we have a lot of work to do. And I also recognize that I am the first African-American Teacher of the Year in 17 years. Like, I know that. And in some of these communities that I go into representing the state, I'm made keenly aware of my blackness. And so I needed to put that out there. I don't know what else to say. I'm going to stop now, but I do need you to know that I am moving forward with a broken heart. My colleagues are mourning. I am mourning. And this is very, very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't know that, and I regret that. Dr. Moore? No. Ms. McFettridge? No. Okay, I have a brief report from the special ed section. They had planned to go in and do training with the principals and the key people who serve on the IEP committees and referrals and those kinds of things. It was scheduled for July before school started, but the Little Rock School District canceled it, and so they're hoping to do that. It will be in 2-hour training, question and answer sessions to the district principals, assistant principals, others in leadership positions at the Little Rock School District Institute on November 1st. The topic will be IDEA, which is the federal law that controls or gives guidelines for special ed. And I think what we're hoping to accomplish is that regardless of whether your child's elementary, junior high, secondary, in this building or that building or the other building, that those are consistent across the board, because the consistency is important as long as it's correct, but we're trying to get some consistency in those conferences. And they're also out working with people on the alternative pathways and the other things that have been passed recently with regard to special ed. As far as personally, I toured the Southwest, what will be the new Southwest High School in Little Rock School District. I think they conducted several different things. It's pretty impressive, all the buy-in from community and sponsoring and the different things and the vision they have. I also was invited to speak at the grand opening of the new Lisa Academy in North Little Rock, and they are so proud that they have a building now instead of a renovated building. And I think the young man that's a senior there this year has been there since kindergarten. and he was talking about starting there in the Best Buy. So I think any time that you get that many children and students together, and then they had people that toured us around, it was great. The commissioner was there as well. I was invited to attend an information meeting over at Hall High School. They're in the process of wanting to become a school of innovation, and they're going through the different process, things that are of a more serious nature, like working with the 9th and 10th graders on reading instruction in their English classes, to incorporating social workers into their program. And then they did not have a band, and so they've hired a band director, and he, at the end of last year, was taking his seniors around to the traditionally black colleges, because they give full scholarships, and a lot of those band people were able to get scholarships. So, you know, that's a good thing. So we got the extracurricular and the curricular going. And then I've had a lot of meetings with various patrons all over the city, some that were here yesterday, and others who don't choose to speak in public about what they think could be done and what they think we should do. And then I worked with a lot of different parents who were frustrated for one reason or another, and about out in the state about different things, and help direct them to their principal, their superintendent, their local board, or people here at ADE. So that's mine. Commissioner?
So the department or the division has been working again for the second year with the Arkansas School Boards Association, going to the regional meetings. They have a number of meetings around the state where the school board members and superintendents and others from the schools in those regions come out, and it's a training, business meeting. But the association has asked us again to have about an hour or so, 45 minutes to an hour, to talk about some of the important things going on here at the division. And we started that, I think it was, the first meetings were earlier this week. And so over the next several weeks, we'll be engaged in that. It was very productive last year. I think the direct engagement with the board members around the state was received very well. And just with the few meetings we've had so far this year, the feedback's been really good. There's still, you know, we talked yesterday about My School Info, and you know, we have over I think nearly 2.5 million page views of that now. But when we're out there in those meetings, it's still remarkable how many people don't know still about the data that's available. So it's part of our message is to really to push folks toward that My School Info tool. I would also like to just briefly revisit, I was going to mention this yesterday, didn't really have the opportunity to do so, but Reggie Ballard, and who has stepped in just a few minutes ago, you know, y'all know Reggie is leading the charter unit. But,
I was sure to say leaving. I was going to go, no,
he's not leaving.
bar the door.
No, Reggie's not leaving. But I've asked him to, at least for now, temporarily change his job duties. Reggie is going to be our liaison, working with the communities with those specific Little Rock schools that originally we were talking about Category 3. But now I think it really is broader, because there's a broader set of schools that he'll be working in. The goal being identifying, you know, what those community partnerships look like to build those community schools. As I said yesterday, didn't really give us an opportunity to dig into that, and we will dig into that more as we develop the MOU. But Reggie will be just a critical part of the team that will be working with that, working with the district, working with the mayor's office, and I appreciate his willingness to take on this role. It really fits his skill set and his experience, his work with through the Clinton School he was involved with the community meetings and reaching out, developing the community blueprint that Mr. Poore and his team have done. I think he facilitated some of those sessions, and so this is kind of getting him back into where a lot of his knowledge and experience is. So we're looking forward to positive results coming from that. And then lastly, Mr. Bradbury's here. Y'all heard Dr. May yesterday briefly mention this, but I want to give Doug, to wrap up my report, an opportunity to expound on a DOJ, Department of Justice grant, Stop the Violence grant that we just received. Doug was instrumental in getting that application in and receiving that grant, and I'm going to ask him to come and talk to y'all about that.
Good morning. I was very excited to know that I had applied for my first grant as in the state agency and received the first grant I've ever applied for $500,000. And as Commissioner Key said, it deals with school violence. And there are specific areas that I felt like there were gaps in the schools that needed that extra push. And one of those, one of mine close to my heart, is anti-bullying. And so with the funding from the Department of Justice, we will be able to create an anti-bullying campaign that will focus on grades 5 through 9. I feel like especially the 6th through 8th grade are the grades where we see a lot of the things that happen in bullying, suicide, and so I felt like there was this gap. So with this grant, we will be able to start an awareness campaign, put together a promotion, maybe do some PSAs across the state of how we can work together with our school districts and our counselors to address those issues. We do an excellent job in elementary. The counselors are in there every other week teaching character. And then when they leave, they go into 6th grade and they're kind of just trying to figure out who they are. And then when they get into about the 10th grade, they realized who they really are. They have their friends. They don't care what anybody else thinks. But it's that 5th through 9th grade that really struggle. And there's a lot of things that are going on in their life anyway. So that is one of the campaigns that we will be working over the next 3 years. The second thing that we're going to do is start a crisis response team. This came from the Commission's report to the governor that there was not regional crisis teams if there was ever a crisis in the state. And so over this next year, we'll be developing 5 crisis response teams across the region to train 40 of our educators, law enforcement, first responders, how to go into a school and address a crisis if needed, whether it be a car wreck, an active shooter, a suicide. We will have the people there ready to go into the school if the school requests it. And so we'll be doing that this year. Each year there will be 5 additional teams trained, and so hopefully over the next 3 years we'll have 15. So hopefully we'll be able to break those down by educational cooperative schools and be able to send those teams into those schools if needed. The other thing that we're going to do is work with school climate. We do our school climate surveys, and the schools get that information, and we just feel like sometimes they don't know what to do with that information. So there's funding put aside to work with the school districts to do professional development, bring people in to help them with that data. And we've done a great job. We've had a couple trainings to bring your own data. And, you know, here's what school climate means. Now what do you do with it? So we want to be able to take this funding and expand on that a little bit more and offer more opportunities, professional development. We'll also be able to go into schools and talk about bullying as well, provide that professional development to the teachers, to the parents. Our goal is to make sure that we visit at least 87 schools a year, opposite one, and 15 educational cooperatives. My office is pretty vacant a lot here recently, but I enjoy that part. The other one is, the last thing is unification material that we'll be able to provide to the schools. In the event there is a crisis, whether it's a tornado or whatever, how do you get those kids to the right parents? What do you do with them? And so we'll be working with schools to be able to provide them information so that they can put a plan if they already don't have one. So very excited to see what's going to happen over the next 3 years.
Sounds exciting. Any questions?
Just say too, this is on top of the SAMHSA grant that we received on mental health, and then you're going to be hearing more about a very significant literacy grant in the days to come. So we're really excited about that. But I compliment Doug. Doug he found this on his own. We weren't aware of it. He made us aware of it and said, hey, these are my thoughts. Aligned it with a lot of the work that has been identified as needed with school safety, with anti-bullying, and really appreciate his work to make this happen. Was a little concerned when he said he enjoys being gone all the time, but that's,
Well, he's nothing if we're not honest.
he is on the road a lot. So anyway, I just wanted to let y'all know that, sometimes this is the kind of work that often gets engulfed and overlooked in a lot of the other work that we're here talking about every month. So that's why I wanted to give Doug a kind of a separate opportunity to talk about this, because it is important work. And for the long-term benefit of our students, I think this is going to produce great results.
Thank you.
Great. And I think, too, one advantage that Reggie will have is knowledge of the different things going on and the resources available at the department and the resources that he'll learn about in Little Rock and Pine Bluff and other places. And
Yeah.
if nothing else, serve as a good conduit for getting the right people together in the room. Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's my report.
That's your report. Okay. Ed Prep?
Good morning. You were
Go
given...
ahead and identify yourself.
Okay, sorry. Joan Luno, Coordinator of Ed Prep here at the division. And you have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. I did update it. I had some current data, so there are a few new slides that are in the current version, so I'll talk about those. So I want to start with talking about our special ed prep programs and updates and data around those. Just a reminder for those of you about our routes in Arkansas to special ed licensure. It does require programs of study. We do not have test out available other than that one area when you add 3/4 SPED endorsement to a K-12 special ed license. So multiple areas. What we've done over the years is we've added programs. This last year, this is a list by higher ed institution of those and the types of programs they have. We've greatly expanded our offerings, and I think that is evident when you see the data on enrollment. That was the old slide. Here's the new slide. So this is data that I get from a survey I do every September of our Arkansas Ed Prep programs, and enrollment is going up every year. I start with 2015 because of the changes in licensure structure that came about in 2013 when we went from P4, 412 special ed add-on only to now we have K-12 special ed add-on first time, and we've even added alt prep, and then we also have our early childhood special ed birth to K that fits in this category, and now special ed resource. So lots of opportunities, lots of options. So we started keeping that data in 2015, which is the first time those candidates were coming out of those programs that were created in 13-14. And it's just a steady upward trend. I wish we saw that in all of our other licensure areas. This is a special enrollment by program type. I went ahead and took off, you notice on this was last year's slide, I took off the P4, 412. All of those candidates have matriculated out. That licensure area is no longer available. So we just focus on what is available so that we can work on those programs. And there's upward trends almost across the board. We did see some downward on the K-12 add-on. And my reasoning behind that is now that teachers who want to be special ed teachers from the beginning, and we get a lot of those. You can see that in our K-12 first-time increases, and then our MAT K-12. They don't have to go get another license first. They can go straight in to a special ed program, and so that's why you see probably a little bit of drop-off in that K-12 add-on.
That's a full circle, because in the early days, that's what you did. You got a special ed degree and then decided which type of handicap you wanted to focus. So I think this is a good thing.
I think it's come back. Good. And I'll talk a little bit about the data. So the two areas that we want to work on in the upcoming year that we think we need growth in, that MAT, early childhood, the BK license especially, and then the first-time birth to K license. The Arkansas got a grant you may have heard of recently within the last year for a program called TEACH. And TEACH is a program that provides education, counseling, support to early childhood workers to get them on a path to education towards licensure. And so that would be the area that we want to focus on. We only have a few programs doing that, so our role is to encourage those programs and to promote that TEACH program. And you might remember Mr. Jeff Dyer, that's what he's doing now. He is over that program, so we're working closely with them. We're also working with our 2+2 programs, which is a partnership between a community college and a four-year college to promote those programs in that pathway. So I anticipate, maybe not next year, but the next year, to see growth in those areas. The other one is the special ed resource. There's a big need for resource teachers as we're making that move or that shift to get kids out of self-contained and into resource settings and preparing them for ACT Aspire. So a resource license is one in which you take a content person, say a 7-12 math teacher. They do that endorsement to prepare them to work in that resource environment, and then they could teach those kids. And so there's a big need for that. That really, when we look at licensure number and look at programs, it's kind of gone stagnant. So we're working on a plan now I hope to bring to you in the near future about how we can bolster that area. I like numbers, you know that, like spreadsheets. So this is just looking at our current areas of special ed license. I always put all of the areas, and that's really the next slide, but I don't like to show those areas that are going down, and I'll show you on that. These are always going to increase, or as long as we have these areas, so we look at increase. So not only are we growing in enrollment, we're also growing in those that are getting the license. So we currently, with our current license, 1,822, and you think, well, that's not enough special ed teachers. Well, when you look at those that have the old areas, we have 12,000 special ed areas on license. Understand that a couple of those are, not a couple, probably a lot of those top numbers, the ones with P4, 412, are one person with both areas. So I can't say with certainty there's 12,000 teachers, but there are those available. And then, you know, talking to Dr. Savidio, what is our need? We have about 3,000 special ed teachers in classrooms. So what that tells me, we don't have a shortage of those in programs for special ed. We don't have a shortage of those with the license. We have a retention problem. And so, and Ms. Zook, I think you know that too. And that needs to be our next work, and working with you and your group, is how can we keep these teachers in the classroom? I would like to do some study on when do they leave? Are they leaving after 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? Is it the same trend that we see with other licensure areas? So I think that would be a good thing to undertake, hopefully, in the future. Couple of quick updates on the APPEL program. As y'all know, those of you that this is our program here at the division, and we did not add any new sites. We did move the Great Rivers to the co-op, and I think that's going to help with that enrollment. We take new site proposals in January, and hopefully I've got 2 more that are wanting to add. We really need one down in Southeast Arkansas again. It just kind of lost enrollment, was not able to come back. But good numbers in APPEL, and that's what this is showing you. We had 209 year 1 APPELs, and when you look at that, you see that decline from last year, but I don't think I like to compare it to 2018. It compares more to 2017. 200 first years is about what we maintain. Last year we had that increase because of a change in licensure rules where we dropped that praxis score as a licensure requirement. The APPEL program was able to adjust and revise our admission requirements, so we got a lot of folks in APPEL that couldn't get into the MAT because of the MAT requirement. This year, with our MATs able to do the same thing APPEL did, I think we should see some increase across the board with the MATs. So we have 389 total APPEL year 1s and 2s, went through summer training and were eligible for jobs. We only have 328 in the classroom. That means we still have about 70 looking for jobs, or on hold is what we call it. A lot of those are in areas of the state where they have a surplus of teachers, believe it or not. If they don't want to relocate, a lot of times they're working in districts, long-term subs, waiting on their job to open. So that's every year that we have that.
It seems encouraging to me that the minorities are getting involved with this, because I know all districts are always looking to have a more diverse staff. So that looks very encouraging to me.
It does. It does. What I also like is how far wide we are in the state. We've got those teachers in 143 districts, and so I'm not sure any other program has that spread in the state. So we want to keep that going. Our breakdown of minority teachers, we're still at 18%. That dropped a little bit this year because we lost some of our candidates in eastern Arkansas, or didn't get those candidates. Like I said, I think we'll see those that went into the MAT program. But the interesting one there is the one at the bottom, is the male to female ratio. I commented when we had our orientation back in June, I commented to my staff, I said, why are there so many dudes in this room? I've never seen it. And when I look at the data, about half of them, and that's almost double what the state average is for enrollment. So I don't know if we did something different to attract males, but I think that's really great that we have that. Almost half of our candidates, first-year candidates, are male. Just an update on EdTPA. I've given that report over the years of how we've brought EdTPA, which is a performance-based assessment for beginning teachers, that we brought in the state with a pilot program in 2015-2016. APPEL started in that pilot, and we've used that as part of our program ever since. It is embedded into year 2. It's just not something that the teachers do at the end of the program. It's embedded starting with summer instruction throughout the program. What I like to see are those pass rates. That first year, and when we started with EdTPA, we pay for that. It's a $300 fee that we've put into the program, so the program pays for it. And then if they were to pass it, then the candidates did not have to take and pass a PLT. And so it was an incentive for them to go ahead and do this. And so that's part of the reason that pass rates increase, but I think just embedding it throughout the program. And that 72%, I don't have the data in front of me, but that's far above the national average. And so we're very proud of what we've done with EdTPA and APPEL. Only a few of our programs, our EdPrep programs, use it in the state. It's cost prohibitive. That's one of the reasons. But we do still have some of our higher eds using that assessment. Want to quickly mention our micro-credential pilot that we did last year and how well it went. The micro-credential was based on culturally responsive teaching. This was just kind of a beginning level for that. This first one was building self-awareness of one's cultural identity. We based it on this book. I don't know if any of you are aware of this book, Zaretta Hammond's book. It's broken down kind of into 3 sections. And for APPEL, or for year 1 teachers, we built this micro-credential on the first unit in that book. And then the hope is that working with Sandra Hurst's group, we're going to build a micro-credential 2 and a 3 that builds upon this one. We piloted it with APPEL. There were over 205 that completed the micro-credential last spring with a 70% pass rate. So they've earned that micro-credential, and they have that digital badge that goes along with them. So we're going to continue to use the micro-credential in APPEL. Not only is it good because of that cultural responsive teaching piece, it exposes our APPEL teachers to micro-credentials, which are growing in use with PD and with districts. And so it was kind of twofold, to use it and to keep it there.
On those who are struggling with passing, do you do any studies to see if there's a particular question or series of information that people are consistently struggling with?
That is kind of like the next step, because it was a pilot, so now we're digging into the data. Bloomberg was the company that we worked with to get that going, and so as we dig into that why, that's what we'll do, and working with our facilitators who are the graders of that micro-credential, but I appreciate that. I just kind of threw this slide in here because I wanted to make you aware of this program that we've done this last year. We started at September 1, 2018, and this is where we started reimbursing licensure assessments for current teachers that add a critical shortage area. And these are our shortage areas. We reimbursed for 45 tests just last year, and I really want that to go up. There's so many that weren't aware of this program, and it's kind of a marketing thing that we need to do. But interesting enough, special ed right now requires 3 tests. If you do the K-12, that's $379. I've given 4 checks since September for special ed teachers adding that, and I think that incentive right there should be promoted. Another thing, especially for these folks that have to take coursework that goes along with these shortage areas, ADHE has a program that will reimburse up to $3,000 towards tuition. So again, a promotion and marketing thing that we really need to do.
Joan, this was the program we shifted, right?
Mhm.
Could talk about that a little bit.
Okay. In prior years, we have paid half the reimbursement fee for someone who has a building a level administrator's license, and I believe that was like a $450, $500 test, and so we would reimburse half of that for these principals adding it to their license. They did not have to be current principals, it's just for anybody who added it. So we looked at the funds that we were spending over the years, and we thought this might be a better use of, let's target these critical shortage areas and current teachers that are actually going in, because they have to be working as a teacher to get this reimbursement, not just add it to a license.
Yeah, that's the critical thing, had to be working as a teacher, because we felt like this shift was more student-focused in trying to make sure we're filling those gaps where we're seeing the most need. So I just wanted to make sure we communicated that. So it is new. That's why the participation isn't where we want it to be yet. But,
okay. Thank you, and I probably should talk more about that when I use this slide, so I can add that data in too. Thank you, sir. Computer science reimbursement, and this was with Mr. Anthony Owen's group, just kind of an update that since May 2018, 145 reimbursements for the computer science test have been made. Mr. Owen also has funding available for tuition reimbursements, and any computer science teacher that goes through the APPEL program gets all of their tuition reimbursed. And since 2018, we've had 12 computer science teachers go through the APPEL program. So I know we want to continue that too. Just a little bit on where we are with implementing scientific reading instruction in ed prep programs and these 2 acts that came out in 2017. I think y'all are aware of the standalone reading test that's now a requirement, or became a requirement in 2017 for K-6 elementary ed teachers and special ed K-12 teachers. I'll come back to the numbers. So the Right to Read Act, so the Act 416 was about the test that said that anyone that entered a program fall 2017 thereafter, anyone adding the area by reciprocity or testing out would need to take that test. So we've had candidates or teachers taking that test since fall of 2017. The Right to Read Act is the one that addresses ed prep programs and curriculum. So they didn't really match up. So we've been having teachers go through and have to pass a test, and the prep programs weren't lined up. We are meeting the timeline on this legislation that states that completers of those programs in May 2021 and thereafter, their program must have been aligned to the appropriate level of scientific reading instruction. So to meet this requirement, all programs had to be aligned this fall. We've worked through with our learning services group, with our RISE specialists across the state, to work through those programs and to get them updated. Just got a handful that we're just kind of waiting by the end of the semester that they should, all the K-6 and special ed by the end of the semester will be aligned. And so, like I said, the goal is by the time they exit the program. We pushed that up a little bit because we knew these teachers were having to pass that test, and so we wanted to get those programs aligned a little faster. Some of the things that we've done to implement and to support this is higher ed has started their own quarterly, what they call literacy roundtables, where they bring everybody to a higher ed institution for a day, kind of like a mini conference, and we talk about issues along with implementing these laws. And so the next one is October 25th at OBU. And that's the one we're going to start looking at the data that I'll go back to with the reading test. Lots of work with Stacy Smith's group with Learning Services to help review those programs, because usually when we review revisions to ed prep programs, we use peer review, but we didn't so much have peer review with other higher ed institutions as we were making this big shift with scientific reading instruction. We had a meeting, a work day with the EPPs and their literacy specialists in May, and that was kind of the turning point for us, where we were able to take those programs and really make that shift. We've provided resources with books, we've bought books, and the other thing that we've done is we paid for the training for one participant from each EPP to go through a full online letters training. Started a survey, starting to get some feedback that's been very positive. Some of them started in July, some started in September, and one of our breakouts at that roundtable will be talking about their experiences and what other supports that they need from ADE to complete that.
I know there's been a lot of concern about, in the literacy area of the ed prep program with ASU, because they were continuing to work more on balanced literacy as opposed to other, are they becoming more receptive now?
Their programs are. So that was, again, kind of continuing the old way, I hate to say it, until this fall when they, by requirement of law, had to move. So their programs, I think I'm waiting on 2 syllabi, but their programs, the undergrad and the grad K-6, met the requirements of those literacy specialists and our panel that reviewed them.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let me just real quick go back to the slide on the data. So this is the first time we've actually looked at the data on the Foundations of Reading test. And I'm just going to give state results. I'm not comfortable breaking it down by EPPs because they weren't required to be aligned to the reading, and so I don't think it really tells us a lot. What we're considering this is baseline data. So this is where we are as a state this first year, and then next year again will be baseline data, and then 2021 would be the first one that we start looking at it and making plans and seeing where our gaps are. So when we look at tests, you look at best attempts, and so that would mean if a candidate took the test 3 times in the year and passed it that 3rd time, only their passing score would be reflected in that year. So that's why there's so many more for all attempts. What's interesting is when you look, say, at all attempts, all candidates statewide, so that's going to include those trying to test out, those adding by reciprocity, higher ed faculty taking it, just, anyone that's already teaching in the classroom can use the test as their second part of their pathway for proficiency, and then comparing it to those enrolled in an ed prep program. Again, not aligned to the science of reading, but they are enrolled in a prep program. There's not a big difference in pass rate, about 65, 66%. Then when you look at best attempts, again, pretty close there, about 76, 77%. I will tell you, I think this is better than I thought it was going to be. I did not have a lot of hope when we put this test in and we weren't training our teachers. I think where this is coming from is our rise in the state, that they are still getting that support. A lot of our teachers, especially our preps, that are already in the classroom, and those that are in ed prep programs are able to reach out to their co-ops. And so I think that's where we've come out ahead of where we thought we would be. So again, baseline data, our goal is 80% pass rate. Okay, that's our initial goal. And so I can answer any questions now. I do want to add one thing that came up yesterday when Fort Smith spoke about their internship program. We have a lot of programs in the state with what I'm calling internship options, and we are starting to look at those, and I want to hopefully provide you a report in the spring and look at what's working, what's not. I appreciate your feedback, and that was a great report that they provided. Next month, I'm bringing you another district and an EPP that wants a similar thing, but I can tell you as these new ones are asking, I'm sending them Fort Smith's plan, I'm sending them UAM's Bridging the Gap, I'm sending them UA Little Rock's STEP plan. So we have all those examples so that I don't want to make a statewide plan, I want each one to meet the needs of their individual districts. Okay, so that's something else that we'll be working on.
Any questions? Thank you for the good report. Is Frank going to talk now?
I want to acknowledge my team, the parts that's here. I don't do this alone. So in collaboration with Frank and then Melissa Jacks, who are here, but I also have 2 of my team members, Michelle Daly. This is her 5th day on the job.
Oh.
I told her she had a really good week. Interesting.
Yeah, a baptism of fire, right?
Yeah, that's right. And then Ann Crosser, our program coordinator for APPEL. And then Michael Rowland's on the road today. Y'all know him.
Well, thank you, and thanks for acknowledging your people. We know it always takes a team. Thank you.
Good morning. Frank Servidio, Office of Educator Effectiveness. And I'm going to share with you, for your information, our most recent Educator Preparation Provider Quality Report. I'm going to go through the report. The slides are not exactly like what you have in front of you. That's why I gave you the hard copy, so that you could actually see the sections that we're going to be referring to. But basically, I'm just going to summarize the information in the slide presentation. This is the fifth year that we're producing this report. This is the first year that we added the word quality to it. It was previously EPPR, and now it's EPPQR, because we are now actually applying a standard to some sections, some parts of some sections of the report. So the EPPQR consists of these 4 sections. We have the first section is a basic overview with basic information, and then we have the workforce data that's relevant to the state. And then we have the one section where we have quality, what we're referring to as the quality factors, where we're applying a standard. And then we have section 4, which is currently ancillary information, but will become part of the quality section next year. So in the overview, we basically just have the introduction, the history, clarifying information, definitions, and the list of all of the providers. In that section, you will see that we have both public and independents. We have all of those listed, which ones are public, which ones offer traditional routes, which ones offer alternate routes, or offer both. In the workforce data section, we have the enrollment, the numbers of those enrolled in programs, and we have the numbers of those who have completed programs working towards licensure. We also have in that section the table indicating first-year program completers who are actually employed in Arkansas public schools. We have a section on the race and gender of the students and the teachers and the enrollees and the completers. And we have a section on the retention of teachers, teacher retention rates.
What is PRISM and eSTEM on this chart?
Those are alternate route programs that are independent, relatively new programs. Detail about eSTEM or PRISM?
eSTEM is our STEM residency program is a residency program at STEM on their campus. It's been around for, I think this is their 5th year. PRISM Education is at a private school in Fayetteville. It's PRISM Teacher Institute, and they work closely with UA Fayetteville. Very small, 1 or 2 completers, and then the same thing for eSTEM. I think their max completers in a year has been about 5 or even enrollees.
Okay,
So they help, but new innovative type programs is what I call them.
Thank you.
Okay.
The slide that you see here is actually not part of the report, but I went back after we completed the report to do some comparisons as to what we in Arkansas are doing versus others. And so I did a comparison to contiguous states and also other states around the country that are similar size, similar size to Arkansas, and also what the national averages were. And so I looked at the number of educator preparation providers in those areas and the number of programs that they offered, and then looked at the number of candidates that they had and the numbers of completers that they had. And when I did the percentages of the average number of candidates over a 3-year period compared to the average number of completers over a 3-year period, we noticed that in most of the country, there are only completing about 30 to 40% of their people that are candidates. But in Arkansas, we are completing 52% of the people that are enrolled in our program. So I thought that was an interesting aspect and an interesting way to look at these data, especially when we sometimes say or hear, well, we're only graduating 50% of our people. But that's actually very good compared to the national average and compared to other states, the states around us or the ones that are similar size to Arkansas. So also in section 2, in the workforce data, we have the charts which reflect the numbers of teacher candidates and also a comparison to those same states. We are recently seeing an increase in enrollment, which is something new. We haven't been seeing that for a while, but that's certainly a good sign in both traditional and alternative routes. We also have information on our completers. I'm sorry, a question?
Yes, when we're looking at that, at what point in their college time are they classified as a program candidate? Is it when they enroll in their
That
freshman
actually
year?
is determined by the institution.
Okay.
So some of them have, they either have a formal enrollment program or they say they have to be a junior, or each institution has their own way of establishing when they are considered to be enrolled.
Okay. And do we have any idea about the other 48%, whether they're just switching majors or, exiting college or any information like that?
We do not have any information on those who are not completing.
Mm-hmm. That would be interesting, but I know there are limitations.
Well, we have been having conversations in a variety of ways about looking at why people are leaving, whether they're leaving the workforce or whether they're leaving the institution. All of these involve some kind of an exit interview, and over the last couple of years, we've been talking about how to establish some kind of way to get that data, but we haven't started that yet.
But that's great.
It's a great thing to do, though.
Yeah, for the
Sure.
institutions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Also in that section, as I said, we have the teacher data. We also have the administrator data. And the administrator data sort of goes up and down, but for the most part, it's pretty steady over the course of the last few years. In section 2C of the report, you'll see that there are, this is the chart that reflects the number of teachers who are teaching in Arkansas public schools their first year after they complete a program. And it's been fairly steady, and we've reported this before, that approximately 60% of our first year completers, or teachers in their first year after completing a program, are actually teaching in Arkansas public schools. And that's been fairly steady for the last few years. Also in section 2, we have the section on race and gender of the teachers as compared to students in Arkansas public schools. And as was mentioned previously when Ms. Luna was speaking to you, we do see that discrepancy is still there. However, noticing now that there is an increase in male enrollment in the APPEL program, that we might be able to change some of these. But we do see that our teachers, current teachers, our teacher candidates, and our EPP completers are still quite far away from the percentages that are actually in our schools.
Do you have any, a similar question on the completers and those teaching in public schools? Do you all get feedback? Are they tracking where the other 40% are going, not in public schools?
We don't track that, but we do have anecdotal data, especially coming from some of our institutions that are preparing students who come from out of state, that many of them do go back out of state. We also get the same information from the border schools, that a lot of the teachers that are getting their license, getting prepared there for their license, are going back across the border to teach where they live. So
that's helpful. I think that it's helpful for each of these programs to understand what's going on afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, that sort of falls into that same category of, if we develop a system whereby we can gather that information, that would be useful to us as we move forward. Another bright spot for us is our teacher retention rates, and we noticed that and it's natural in just about every profession, the longer you're there, the more people leave. But we are seeing that the retention rate in the state of Arkansas, Arkansas Public Schools, is still greater than what the trend is on the national average. So we're looking at losing about 24% of our teachers after 5 years, whereas most research indicates that nationally that's 50%. 50% of the teachers are leaving within the first 5 years, and we're only losing about 25% of ours. Okay, so the next section of the report is actually the quality factors, and this was the first year we did this. We applied a standard to each of the factors, the first one being whether a program was accredited. And so we set that standard at whether a program was accredited. We also looked at their summary pass rates on licensure tests. We looked at their novice teacher survey data and the supervisor survey data. And for these three, we set the standard at 1 standard deviation below the prior year's mean. So we looked at the data from the previous year. We identified what the mean was for each of these factors, and then we said that the standard for this year would be set at one standard deviation below that. And this, again, was the first time we did this. This was more or less a trial run. And so we wanted to see what the data would look like at this point. So for the first one, obviously we knew what the answer would be. We knew that setting the standard at accreditation meant that all of our institutions of higher ed would meet the standard because they are required to be accredited. And so setting the standard at accreditation meant that anyone who was not accredited would not meet the standard. And so all of our non-IHE-based EPPs do not meet this standard. The interesting thing about this, though, is that now CAEP is allowing for accreditation application by these providers. And so all of our EPPs will have the opportunity to obtain accreditation should they choose to do so. The next section was the summary pass rates. This was taken directly out of the Title II report that we do every year. The standard was set at 88%, and we had 4 EPPs that did not meet this standard. And you see their numbers were 87, 79, 72, and 83%. Still not bad, but because of where we set the standard, they did not meet the standard. Now, just to point out that there isn't a penalty associated with that. This is really, at this point, just for information purposes. For the novice teacher survey data, we do a Likert scale on a scale of 1 to 4. Their responses on their perceptions of how well they were prepared. We set the standard at a 2.6 for the average, and all of the EPPs did meet that standard. I thought there was one more, but I think that's it. Okay. And then the last section was something we added this year, asking the EPPs to identify how they were going to address academic shortage areas, how they were going to address increasing the numbers of minority teachers, and what are they doing about partnerships with the schools and community, and how are they incorporating the science of reading. If you go to the actual report online, then you can click on the link that takes you to their responses to these questions. It was far too cumbersome to put it into this report, so there's just a link to it on the actual website. And what we've established is that...
Question.
Sure.
Do you know or remember off the top of your head just a few of the responses specifically about the minority teacher recruitment stuff?
Most of the responses dealt with, we are reaching out to the community and we are advertising more and we are going into the school districts and those types of responses. And what I was just about to say is that for next year's report, we are actually going to establish a rubric that indicates what we expect them to do. And so we will set that standard as to what kinds of things we expect them to show us that they are actually doing to address these areas, and we'll be able to then say whether or not they're meeting that standard. And that's this year's report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody have any additional questions? Very good. It's just very helpful.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I feel like I'm getting spoon-fed instead of having to click around on the very well-done website, but sometimes it's nice just to have it in your hands. Okay, anyone have any new business? I think one point I want to point out on new business, that's always on this agenda and it's always on the Thursday agenda. And sometimes if a board member, it's not happened very often, if a board member brings up something that's not on the agenda, others think, well, I didn't have any data on that. Well, you know, you may not have any data. It may just be an idea because, as we all know, the only time we can talk is when we're together. So I think my thing here is, as you are thinking about all the input that we've had and the different things that we will want to talk about as we look at the MOU, as we look at filling out the anything in particular or specific with regard to Little Rock School District, the things we'll be looking at is we can look at that under new business, or you can you know, have that as an idea once, because I think we have said that the Little Rock School District will be an action item on all the agendas, but it may or may not have links under it at the time because, but we have said publicly and want to, during November, December, January especially, flesh that out. I know one thing that I have been thinking about, in the court case, the Covington case, it said that the high school attendance zones will be redrawn. And we need to get that done, or the Little Rock School District needs to get that done by January so that scheduling and people will know where their children are going to go to school, and we'll see if we're going to phase it in or do it all at once or get scheduling. So the sooner that's done, I was thinking for information, it might be helpful if Mr. Woods, who's the chairman of the community, excuse me, the Community Advisory Board, or his designee from that group, and then maybe me or my designee from this group could sit in on some of those sessions so that we can stay up to date and then give reports back to this group, if that makes sense to all of you. So those kinds of things, and since you had the motion yesterday, you may have been thinking, you know, more broadly than just the things that you said. So, you know, if you could kind of help us stay up to date on all of that.
Sure.
Okay? Does that sound fine to you? And maybe we'll ask the ones who aren't here today to watch this meeting so we can communicate that to them as well. We have a public comment, Ms. Freno? Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Ms. Dean, second by Mr. Packline. Thank you all. Be safe going home.